Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Do Nothing Project, our weekly experiment in not doing very much, in hanging out together and doing a meditation, maybe exploring a meditation topic, being resolutely unambitious, which is so good for us. And just to hang out in community, I guess, to see all these folks. Hey, guys, I see them typing in. Hey, Tristan. Hey, Landon, typing in on the side. Hey, Kent. So I love this. We get together wherever we are, all around the world. We get together at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night, and we meditate together. And there's something interesting about that. It's just... I know for me, it does something to my practice. I like sitting on my own sometimes, but I'm much more responsive, even if it's doing it virtually, feeling like I'm meditating in company. It does something to, I feel like, to bolster my practice, gives a certain kind of energy to it. So for today's practice, I was thinking I would do something on empathy, compassion, and presence, because there's a lot of, I've done a few meditations on this subject. I think there's one on my webpage, and I did one with 10% Happier, and they've been called empathy versus compassion, which is maybe not the best way to put it. And so a lot of people are confused about it, because it's basically what I say is basically that it's really important to have compassion, and sometimes empathy can lead to these negative effects. And it kind of makes it sound like some people are like, oh, does that mean something about empathy is not good? Or so I wanted just to kind of take this opportunity to clarify a little bit about the empathy compassion thing, and then guide a practice around it. So this interest in particular of mine came out of, it's sort of part of my interest in neuroscience and the science stuff. There was a really great paper that came out about 10 years ago by a social neuroscientist named Tanya Singer, who's I think based in Berlin, and it was all about this question. And actually, I'll get Andrew to put a link in the show notes so you can read the paper. It was a really interesting paper. What they did was basically they wired up all these brains of people, and they had these different control groups, and one of the groups sat there and basically watched images of people in distress. And what they found was that when this happened, the same parts of that, the person watching it, the people in distress, the same parts of their brain lit up that the people who were in distress lit up. In other words, they were basically really deeply empathizing and experiencing, to a certain degree, some of the same stresses. And this is kind of part of empathy. We feel someone's pain. We kind of know this. And then they had another group where they basically got this, or rather, it was the same group later, a different training. I can't remember exactly the science stuff. Sorry, I'm screwing this up. There's scientists out there, but I'm getting it roughly right. They took another group and they basically gave them in the first part, in addition to watching other people and experiencing challenges, they also did a whole training in empathy. So of learning how to feel other people's pain. So they'd done a whole training in this, and as a result, they had a lot of these responses. But with the compassion people, they did a similar thing where they basically did a training and then watched these videos, except their training was in compassion, meaning it wasn't in just creating and empathizing with what someone was going on, like feeling someone's pain. It was actually actively wishing someone well. And the reason this is important is around resilience and around like what they found in the caregiver world. What they found in the caregiver world is when people are continually exposed to other people's challenges day in and day out, the empathy, of course, is super important to get them kind of on the same, to get them on the same page. But after a while, they start to burn out. They start to experience a lot of negative affect themselves. And so the idea was that, is there a way to help these caregivers? I mean, we're all in that caregiver role in our lives in different position. Is there a more effective stance to take in the moment other than just purely feeling what someone's feeling? And the idea is that a more active form of compassion could be that strategy. And I should say here, it's not just when you're repeatedly exposed to challenges around you, One of the ways we respond is by getting overwhelmed, is by really taking on a lot of that distress ourselves. If any of us have ever felt stress being around stressed people, you'll know what that's like. And what happens then? Often it's like aversion, get me away from here. So there's that response. But the other response often is to shut it down. That in order to cope with those situations, we completely suppress our empathy just so we can get through the day, and we kind of get numb. And that's not a really adaptive strategy either. Or maybe it may be adaptive, but probably not a really useful one in the long term for really being able to help folks. So the idea is that there's this other way. There's this way of like you use the empathy in the moment to help you recognize, or to, it's to help you kind of synchronize with the person. So it's like, okay, great, you're having this empathic response. And then as soon as you sort of notice that, then you kind of override that response with a more active, warm compassion, which is like sort of wishing someone well, that kind of thing. And that is actually much more sustainable. That's what they found in the experiment, that it's much more sustainable. And it's sort of, I think, what a lot of people just figure out how to do intuitively, people who are surviving in, caregiver positions, doctors and nurses and all that. So I thought with this meditation, we would keep it in the do nothing spirit, meaning it's going to be pretty easygoing and lazy-ish. It'll be a lot about just cultivating presence. So when I teach strong compassion, I kind of teach two parts. I teach a first part of just being present. What does that actually mean? Being in presence means being present. It means being available to the situation, not trying to block it, not trying to suppress it or get away from it, just finding this opening to it, but doing it in a way that you feels like you're connecting to this sort of strong ground underneath you, which is sort of a particular flavor of equanimity. So that's kind of how I set it up. And then from that place, go into a place where you're actively sending some caring to someone. So in our practice, we'll do mostly just the presence part. And then for the loving kindness portion at the very end, the last 5 minutes or so, we'll do a more active compassion where we're sending someone we know is having a hard time, wishing them well. Yeah. Oh, great. Lauren and Andrew have commented here in the notes on the study. So, and I think Lauren was the original person one of the people who asked me about the empathy versus compassion. So let's do our meditation. I'm going to set the, it's 8:09 right now. So I'll just use this clock. Actually, it's easier I'll use it. So we'll go until 8:34. And then maybe I'll answer a question or two that I've got lined up here. All right. Oh, shoot, I forgot my bell. Well, no bell. Okay. Let's go. Okay, so you can start with a few deep breaths if you like. I kind of need this. For me, it's sort of like get myself organized, take an inhale, stretch up my spine. On the exhale, I kind of breathe out any tension, especially after talking like this. I'm kind of worked up. So I'm going to breathe out tension, feel myself relax a little bit. So as always with these practices, if you want to follow along, that's great, but you don't have to. You can do your own thing. The practice I wanted to guide tonight was really around this idea of presence. Presence as the ground of compassion. And so what I want to say is when we as we get into our sit, right at the very beginning, as we kind of find our equanimity, which is really finding a kind of openness to the present moment. So you're not blocked against sounds, or you're uptight about something. You're all like that. Instead of being all tight, seeing if you can, just sort of soften through your belly, soften your shoulders, kind of let yourself be open. So it's as if there were sounds around you, you kind of absorb them. You wouldn't like bounce off them. You're that open. And you got the same openness towards your body sensations, towards your thoughts, your feelings. They're all allowed to be here. So that openness is a lot about that's equanimity. But what we want to really kind of merge it with a little bit is also a feeling of the strength of this position. So equanimity is a lot of vulnerability. It's a lot about being open. So can we, within that, can we also find as we breathe in, kind of find this solidity, a sense of I find that as that's what presence is for me. Presence is a kind of my body displacing space, a feeling of being present. That's a kind of anchor. And you can also breathe up from the ground if you like. Imagine you're breathing up from the ground, up to the center line of your body. So this balance of being open and being firm, being stable. And then for an anchor, you can, or a home base, whatever you like. It could be your breath, it could be the body, the heaviness of the body where it's connecting to the seat or the cushion of the ground. And just feeling your presence here as you work with your home base. Good. So with every exhale, sort of like you're settling a little bit more, settling a little more, coming more into your body, into this moment, arriving. Every moment in meditation, it's like we're continually arriving. And you're feeling your presence, yeah. The space your body displaces what it feels like to be present in this moment, embodied. Good. So exploring this being present, presence. Of course, that's what is really needed in any moment. It's what people want. They don't want you to say something. It's not about what you say and what you do. It's just showing up, being present. That's what we're exploring now, the quality of that. Maybe you're working with a home base or an anchor, the breath or the body, or maybe you're just sort of sitting in your presence, practicing the being here, deepening it. Staying present also means if you notice you're getting caught in thinking or your mind's wandering off or you're daydreaming, just coming back, noticing that's happening and coming back to your home base, coming back to your awake, present presence. Just a few more minutes before we do our compassion practice. Presence. It's like I am present is to the body what I'm aware is to the mind. Okay, so we'll finish the last few minutes with the little mini compassion practice, kind of building on that. So compassion is all about, you see someone suffering and you want to relieve their suffering. It's not about the how, it's just the desire for their suffering to end, for them to be well. People often have this idea that somehow it needs to be very warm and loving and sentimental, and it can certainly be that way. But it's based in this presence, in this being available. And for some people, then their active expression of compassion has very much intermingled with that flavor. So the instruction is to think about someone who's having a hard time, maybe not the most difficult situation, but someone who's having a hard time, and wish them well. See if you can connect the intention for their challenges to pass, for them to feel better, for their suffering to be relieved. Then you can use a little phrase like, may you be well, may you be at ease, whatever phrase works for you. And you're just connecting this intention for their suffering to end, your own desire for that, your own. And this can be, it can be an active expression of warmth, like you're kindling this feeling of love and caring for them. May you be well. So it's active, or it might be more just this feeling of presence, but they're both based in presence, all these responses. So may you be well. Noticing your own presence even as you activate this compassionate response, as you hold it down for the other person. So you might think of them, you might visualize them, just repeating your phrase. Concentration part comes from when you lose touch with it. You just reconnect to that intention and repeat your phrase. This practice is a doing. It's not a passive being submerged in feeling. It's an active sending this caring out, activating this presence, showing up. May you be well. May all of us be well. And that's the meditation for tonight. If I had a bell, I would ring it, but I forgot my bell. All right, cool. So good to meditate with you guys. You know, it's funny. I just thought of this at the end. I think the reason I really connect to this teaching around presence and compassion is I volunteered a bunch of years ago for this group called Hospice Toronto. So they're like a group that they do palliative care work. So they set up, connect volunteers to people who are dying. And so I was a volunteer for that for a little bit. I don't know, maybe I mentioned this at some point. I didn't do it for very long. And the truth was I was really crappy at it. So it was a bunch of years ago, really at the very beginning of my meditation career. And I think the reason I was bad at it is because I actually wasn't very good at being present the way they want. I was like a problem solver. I would just hover around these people who were dying and try to figure out how I could help them which would just stress them out. And I eventually realized that what really mattered in those situations was just, of course, I did realize that then too, but was just to be present, was just to be with them, to not try to fix them or solve them, to not try to sit there, to listen, to witness, to be. And that was a huge comfort to people. And then nowadays, when I'm talking to somebody who's dealing with some, they've lost someone or something, that's what I always remember. I don't need to, it's not what I say. It's just staying there. And not, this is all common sense, but it was like something I had to kind of learn because it wasn't common sense for me, I guess. So, okay, guys. So question from Kent, will I do more of those Kid Ninja podcasts? I don't know. I love doing kid stuff. I might do some for 10% Happier. I might do some with Kid Evolve. I'm not really sure what's going on with them, but they have a bunch of those. So I'll have to see. There's a lot of different things to do. So, okay. So there's a few questions here too. I thought I'd just answer one quick one. This is someone emailed in and asked, is it normal to cry sometimes? They said in meditation, they've been practicing meditation for about a year and noticed that a difference. But the big question is it normal to cry? I guess when they meditate. And the answer is yes, it's totally normal. It doesn't happen for me very often, but there's been times when it has. Basically, meditation it catches you up with where you are. So sometimes where you are is hurting, or you're, it shows you that you've been carrying around a lot of stuff, like some grief about things or who knows what. And then because you're so open, because you're practicing that equanimity, that openness, it starts to come out. And it's very healthy to cry. I mean, crying is incredibly healthy. It's a super cathartic thing. It's sort of releasing the energy of that emotion, giving it, like expressing it, letting it out and kind of honoring it in a way. And so it's very common in a meditation retreat. Most people are fairly silent, but or I should say it's not uncommon to see people with tears coming down their face, or not necessarily loudly sobbing, but definitely that thing happening. And I've been in that position many times where you're sitting, and often it's not tears of sadness. It's really tears of joy. It's tears of like just the beauty of things, like the bittersweet beauty of this thing we're doing. I don't even know why. You just feel emotional about it, but it's not. It's like deeper than emotion. It's like the honor of even being there. So that would be my answer to that. General question here from Lois. I have started with 10% Happier app about 6 months ago, and I'm wondering, am I supposed to be working towards longer sits and sitting on my own without using the app? Oh, that's a great question. I think ultimately, yes, insofar as we don't want meditation to be just this thing that we do here on like only when we meditate and then we go out into our lives. Ultimately, the skills we're learning in meditation, the skill of, say, in this meditation, talking about connecting to presence and being open, those are things that we want to do all the time. So, so there's this natural way in which meditation starts as something that is happening on a cushion, but it becomes something we do more and more out in the world. So you don't want to have to depend on someone guiding you to connect to those qualities. It's good once in a while to try to meditate. It's great to do guided meditations on the app or with a group in person, but it's good occasionally to try it on your own just to see that those skills are something that you don't have to depend on someone else for. And of course, as you doing longer sits, it's kind of up to you, but generally the longer we sit, we can sometimes connect more deeply to some of these qualities. It's like you're doing it longer. You could say it's a deeper training. Although I've said this before, I think the consistency piece is more important than the length piece. Better to do, 7 10-minute meditations, or like, a week. So one 10-minute meditation every day than to do 1 half-hour meditation once a week. In my mind, it's like, it's that taste of, and not just me, a lot of people say this, it's sort of, that's how you develop the habit. You tap into it every day. It's like, okay, that's how you're kind of getting your nervous system used to it. Whereas if you only do it once in a while, it's kind of like a novelty to your nervous system. So if you really want to create the habit, the consistency piece is important. So a bunch of questions in there. Yeah, Kent's saying he gets the tears too sometimes. Nice, bro. Yes. So Andrew's saying frequency over duration as you begin in a meditation. Absolutely. All right, my friends. Yeah. I probably should not be responding to things when I'm doing this because it's probably annoying people watching later, but I'm kind of reading the stuff here. Lois is saying she does 2 meditations a day for 15, 20 minutes almost every day. That's pretty awesome. That's a great practice to be doing that. I should be so lucky to do that. So, all right, guys. Happy Sunday night. Good to hang out with y'all. I'll see you next week, unless my beautiful wife, Sarah, who's meditating right across from me, is having a baby, which is very possible. We're due September 8th. So we'll see. Bye, guys. Time well spent for sure.